Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to this Pride Month event as we wait for what we hope will be good news from the U.S. Supreme Court soon. I wanted to thank Jimmy and Pam for inviting me to do this. I am very excited to meet these three great supporters of gay marriage and excellent football players as well. We have Chris Kluwe, Brendon Ayanbadejo, and Scott Fujita. I will just tell you a little bit about each of these guys. You probably know most of it, and then we'll go right into some questions that I have for them, and then Q&A from the audience. So Chris joined the Oakland Raiders recently after many years as the Minnesota Vikings punter. Chris played for UCLA and went to high school in California. He is an avid Guitar Hero and World of Warcraft player, as well as a bassist in a band he founded in Minneapolis. His first book, a collection of essays, is due out at the end of June and is titled Beautifully Unique Sparkle Ponies. So we'll ask him a little bit about that. Most of you probably know where that comes from. Chris is well known for the letter he wrote in September of last year to Maryland State Assembly Delegate Emmett Burns, who had sent a letter to the owners of the Baltimore Ravens requesting that they keep Brendon from speaking out publicly in favor of legalization of gay marriage. Chris, along with Brendon and Scott and a number of other professional athletes, filed an amicus brief in the Prop 8 case before the Supreme Court. And in March of 2013, Chris joined Athlete Ally, an organization focused on stopping homophobia and transphobia in sports, as an ambassador, and we'll talk a little bit more about that organization as well. Brendon is a linebacker who most recently played for the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. Sorry to the Niners fans.
He was a linebacker. He was.
The size of that ring.
Brendon also played for UCLA and went to high school in California. Brendon's been a strong advocate for gay marriage since 2009, and as I mentioned, he wound up in this firestorm when this Maryland State Assembly delegate asked the team's leadership to keep him from expressing his opinions. And he responded that he had no intention of remaining silent on an issue of conscience and public importance. Brendon serves as chairman of the Athlete Ally Advisory Board. He's also working on an MBA at George Washington University, and I understand hopes to become a university athletic director at UCLA, ideally.
Down the line when I'm a little bit more mature. Yeah.
And is writing a column for Fox Sports. Scott very recently retired after many years as a linebacker, including with the Saints when they won the Super Bowl. Scott graduated from Berkeley, go Bears, and was born in California. Scott first vocalized his support for marriage equality in 2009, and then again in March 2013, he wrote an article in the New York Times expressing his support for LGBT equality, dispelling the notion that football players, football as a sport, and LGBT acceptance don't mix. Scott emphasized that he would embrace a teammate were the teammate to come out of the closet. Scott is also actively involved in many other causes, some of which we'll talk about, such as promoting adoption, breast cancer awareness, the Gulf Restoration Network, and Team Gleason. So with that, I will start asking you guys some questions. And thank you again for coming.
Can I say one thing about Berkeley, though? I love Berkeley, and they're our sister school. And they invented the quarter system, and then they dropped it, went to semesters, but UCLA had to keep it, so.
And UCLA is Berkeley's little sister school.
Right.
They steal Berkeley's fight songs.
But we play it much better.
Yeah. And I don't know if we ever beat them or not.
But we beat them in football. And basketball. We digress.
All right. I went to Michigan, so I think the Big Ten's better than all. So starting with Chris, why don't we just have each of you talk a little bit about how you got involved in advocating for marriage equality?
So essentially I got involved in the off season of last year when a group called Minnesotans for Marriage Equality contacted me on Twitter and said, hey, would you like to help us defeat this constitutional amendment in Minnesota that was going to ban same-sex marriage? And I said, yeah, that seems like a great thing to do. I don't think anyone should be banned from marrying each other. And so I got involved with them, started, recorded a couple radio ads, and then did a fundraising dinner. And then I saw the letter that Delegate Burns had written to the Ravens about Brendon, and it made me really upset because it was a First Amendment violation from an elected U.S. representative, and it was also the fact that why do you care? What does it matter to you if two people who love each other want to get married? That doesn't affect your life in the slightest. And so I wrote a letter back, which then Deadspin published, and a lot of people saw. And yeah, and then it kind of broadened the platform that I was able to speak on, and so I said, okay, well, I have this platform. Now I have a chance to use it and hopefully make people's lives better. And from that point on, I was like, okay, here we go. Let's make people aware that you have to have empathy. You have to treat people the way you would want to be treated in order to have a functional society. So that's how I got involved.
Brendon?
Well, for me, it's a little bit different. I think just innately, these two gentlemen, they understand freedom and what this Constitution guarantees to our fellow citizens. But for me, it was more of a life experience type of thing. So my dad's Nigerian and my mom is Irish. So my dad's is dark as coffee, my mom's is white as cream. And I came out this beautiful caramel macchiato color.
Humble, too.
Yeah, it's beautiful, A lot of mosquito bites. But so there was a time, prior to my parents' meeting, the monumental case Loving versus Virginia in the late 60s, and that prevented interracial couples, so anti-miscegenation laws. So I had always thought, man, if my parents had met in the 60s, I don't know if I'd even be here today. And as we progress into the future, my wife here, she's sitting in the front row. She's also a mixed breed like myself. Second row, sorry. But and then my beautiful children as well that are here tearing shit up like usual. They're also beautiful mixed kids, and eventually everyone's going to be mixed. But could you imagine living in a society where there's no racial mixing? So let's fast forward to today. Actually, let's go to 2009. I felt compelled to write a letter, an open-faced letter to President Obama, and I titled it "Same-Sex Marriage, What's the Big Deal?" And that got published in the Huffington Post, and not as many people read it as Chris's article.
You gotta swear.
It wasn't as well written. But I was the first professional athlete to publicly support marriage equality. But really what compelled me to write it was Britney Spears. And she had gone to Vegas and she met a young bloke and they hit it off for a couple nights, hitched it. And they had instantly had more rights than some of my friends that had been together for 25 years. So I wrote the article, published it, and all of a sudden in 2009 I became gay. Everyone said I was gay, and I guess in 2011 I was bisexual, and 2013 I think they're accepting my heterosexuality after a couple kids, and so whoa, snap, that's a fine. I'm sorry.
It's definitely fine.
Yeah.
That's what we do in meeting rooms. You got to cover for people who their phones go off.
Yeah. And so for me, it's kind of a life experience thing, and just knowing what it feels like to be on the other side, and knowing what our LGBT brothers and sisters are going through. Even though I'm a straight ally, so I don't know to the fullest extent. But I totally equate this to equal rights and human rights. It's not. Everyone says, "Why are you so champion for gay rights or LGBT rights?" No, I'm just a champion for rights, for equal rights, and so that was the genesis.
What they both said. No, I think, why do I support equality? I think, would common sense not be a satisfactory answer?
Yep.
Why is common sense not enough? For me, I share a lot of the same stories. My father's Japanese American, was interned during World War II in an Arizona relocation camp in the desert. My mother's Caucasian, so like these guys, I also have an experience with interracial marriage, like Brandon's folks. Chris is married to someone of a different race. So we were all impacted by Loving versus Virginia, and I think at its root, from my family, this is something that impacted us. I'm also adopted. That's why I don't look Japanese. I got the name, not the blood. I feel Japanese at heart, though. When I was living in Louisiana, I read about a measure that was being proposed in Arkansas, and it was something like the single-parent adoption ban. And the whole idea was to prevent single parents from adopting children. And this is in a place in the South where there are thousands of foster children who just become institutionalized. And this law, to me, was code for gay people can adopt. And as an adopted child, I just took a lot of offense to that. And the message that was sending was, it's better to have kids, again, institutionalized in foster care without a safe, loving, permanent home, rather than having 1, 2 parents, whatever it is, who are willing to provide that permanent home for them. It just made no sense to me. So coupling those two things together, again, being adopted, mixed race parents, having some friends who from the LGBT community who have been impacted by this as well, it just became important for me to talk about this. I think the first time I mentioned the idea of marriage equality was in a locker room in an interview in 2007. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy, like, what the hell is he talking about? What's marriage equality? And someone said, oh, that's gay marriage. And I said, I don't even like the idea of calling it gay marriage, to tell you the truth. I mean, I don't call my marriage to my wife straight marriage. It's just marriage. And words matter, language matters. And when I was at the GLAAD Awards down in Los Angeles in 2009, the table I was at, there was a young lady there, and she pulls me aside at one point with my wife and shares a story with me about her younger brother who had come out at one point as gay to his unsuspecting, very unsupportive father. And the father really just wrote him off. And her brother ended up taking his own life. And she said that her father was sort of a man's man, whatever that means, a big football guy, really looked up to me as a player. And when he heard me talking about the issue of marriage equality and gays in general, it started to force him to reconsider his feelings about it. So she challenged me. She said, it takes people like you, for people like my dad, to be able to open their mind a little bit. So she said, please keep talking about this. And I'm just honored to stand be up here with these guys and a growing community, and to have watched the conversation evolve the way it has just since 2007 when I first uttered marriage equality. No one knew what that meant. And now it's finally on people's radar. People are talking about it. The conversation has evolved. And it's to the point now where hopefully we have a landmark hearing here in a little bit, and the decision comes through that grants equality for everybody. That's what we're all here for. That's what we're all fighting for.
I have another question for all of you. Why don't we start with Brendon this time? What's been your experience with homophobia in the NFL?
It's been evolving, and that's a beautiful thing. So early on, the guys, I say silence is consent. And so when you hear these words, these slurs being thrown around, I'd always say, hey, you can't say that. You don't need to say no homo. You don't need to say the F word or replace gay replace dumb with gay. And so after years and years of ingraining this into guys' heads, I went from 20 times a day, and then after a couple years, it was 19.5 times a day. So I was keeping metrics. And,
we like that at Google.
It wasn't working, but it was working. It was working, but it's come it's come full circle to not really knowing of any allies, not really knowing that publicly that he supported LGBT rights, to Kluwe stepping up, to other players stepping up, and now we have we have this T-shirt now. Mm-hmm. And so this T-shirt here, the NFLPA endorsed this shirt. So DeMaurice Smith, our executive director, he supports LGBT rights, and so does our president, Dominic Foxworth. So I approached them with an idea one day that we need to come up with some type of endorsement for LGBT rights. And it was something as simple as a T-shirt, and the proceeds will go towards LGBT advocacy groups. And that's how far we've come, from people calling me the 3-letter F word to now everybody's starting to build this critical mass, and they're starting to see that everybody deserves equality. But I think the most important thing is we're having the conversation, and even if guys don't support it, we're having the conversation, and guys are learning things, and they're hearing things that they never heard before, from people being born gay to they've never heard that before, to being gay is not a sin. And you've been taught this basically since the day you came out via religion and other things and ignorance, that being gay is perfectly normal, and God created you that way. And we're having the conversation, and that's where we've come.
Yeah, I'm so glad Brendon mentioned the idea for these T-shirts. I mean, it's a great idea by him. And I sit on the executive committee as a vice president for our players union. I've been on the board now for 4 years, and as me, I'm always kind of viewed as the sort of the gay-loving, tree-hugging socialist from Berkeley. So I like the idea. I like the idea of the union kind of getting behind more social progressive issues. But I was also elected to be in this position where you have to take everybody's feelings into consideration, and are advancing ideas like that good for the broader membership. So to have someone like Brendon, who's a new player rep, come in with this great idea and have our leadership embrace it like that, it's huge. It's huge. And again, it's not so much about a political issue. And that's one of the things that we always struggle with trying to convey to, not just our members in the players union, but really everybody. It's not a political issue. This is a people issue. It's a people issue about people. And that's the struggle. It's changing the conversation so people understand it that way. And I'm glad we're getting to the point where we can have the conversation.
Yeah, and it's also, from what I've seen, the younger players coming into the NFL are raised more in an environment of tolerance and respect, and that's just the world that they're growing up in, and you can really see that in their attitudes because they look at this issue and they're like, well, who cares? Why does anyone care who you marry? And it's not all of them, because just like society, it's not everyone. But the tide is shifting, and you're starting to see that more and more in the views of the younger generation, and that's something that we just have to keep working at it and realize that this is a generational issue. It's like suffrage, it's like segregation, it's like slavery. It's something that time is going to change, and we have to keep working at it to keep changing it. But it's also going to take a while. There are no easy fixes, and I've said it before. Basically, you have to wait for the old people to die off, and you let the young people take their place. And I mean, that's really what fixes it. So that it's good to see that happening in the NFL. That you just see those young people keep cycling through. Not the dying off part.
Can I make a point real quick?
Please do.
But one thing that we do see, and I can't blame the guys themselves, because the biggest role model that we do have is the government. And if the government continues to discriminate, and if you can still be fired in 38 states for being a part of the LGBT community, if you can still be evicted from your home for being a part of the LGBT community, then you shouldn't be so shocked when you find people in our society that are bigots and that are just saying some of the things that they say and that discriminate. So it's it's from the top down and from the bottom up. The people have to change, and the government has to change with it.
Yeah.
So
and those are the things that we can work on. That's what we can change. I mean, that's the part where we set the structure in place that people know that, hey, this is where society is heading, and my behavior where I'm not tolerating other people, that's not accepted anymore. That's not proper behavior.
Yeah, I think Brendon says it best. I mean, it's about rights. If people can't wrap their heads around the idea of gay rights or calling it gay rights, just call it rights. Then it's that simple. I think in this country, it does come down to the government. We discriminate against people for all kinds of reasons. But with an issue like this, you need an evidence-based rationale to be able to discriminate. I haven't heard one yet. And we're still discriminating against members of the LGBT community. It's so hard to say. It's a mouthful.
Can we come up with a new acronym?
But we discriminate against people who are 16 years old. You have to be 16 to get your driver's license because evidence suggests that people under 16 are going to be irresponsible and get in an accident. We discriminate against people under 21 and say they can't drink because evidence suggests they'll be irresponsible and get into some kind of trouble. We discriminate against those who...
They can go to war, though. They can go to war.
Right.
They can go to war.
Discriminate against those who get to a certain age and say they can no longer drive because evidence suggests that there'll be a hazard on the road. So again, there is no evidence to suggest that this will be dangerous or harmful to society. It's just about rights, as Brendon always says.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, I have a follow-up question for you, if you're comfortable answering it.
Sure.
One of your former teammates, Adrian Peterson, recently came out on came out's probably the wrong way of putting it, on the radio, made a statement that it's something to the effect of, I'm not with gay marriage, and then he clarified it later by saying he was okay if other people were in favor of it, but he wasn't. Have you talked to him about that at all?
I haven't talked to Adrian recently about that. We were good friends in the locker room, and for me, the fact that Adrian is willing to let other people have their rights, while that's not the ideal situation, it's really the best we can hope for from a lot of people, is the fact that as long as you're not discriminating against people, you don't have to actually embrace it. We'd like to get to the point where everyone is embracing the idea that you treat other people the way you'd like to be treated. But while we're working towards that, avoiding active discrimination is one of the steps to that process. And so with Adrian, he may not personally agree in same-sex marriage. He may not personally agree for gay rights, but he's not actively going out of his way to rally against it. And that's something that I would like to see him embrace gay rights, because it's something that it's human rights. It's something everyone should have. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to crucify him for being who he is, being raised in the environment that he was raised in, and even saying what he said, that can be tough to do if you're raised in a very religious environment. So I'm not upset at Adrian. I would wish he could do more, but at the same time, he's not actively trying to conspire against LGBT rights.
Thanks.
If that makes sense to anyone.
Brendon, can you tell us a little bit about Athletes Ally?
Yeah, so Athlete Ally is a group that tries to foster inclusion of the LGBT community into sports. So we go around and we speak at different schools, and we just talk about LGBT sensitivity. The last thing we want is imagine Greg Louganis if he didn't continue to be the greatest American diver in history, and he's one of my role models and one of my heroes. But imagine if he got bullied out of diving because there were some straight kids and they made fun of him because he was a part of the LGBT community. So we want to foster kids, and we want to encourage them to continue to play sports, especially with all the problems we have with heart disease and diabetes and people being so sedentary. The last thing we want to see are our children being bullied out of sports. And so I think, once you see somebody like Jason Collins on that level, 7 foot tall black dude that's gay, it destroys a lot of people's perception of what they think gay is. And now oh my God, there's an athlete in the NBA and he's gay, and there's Chris Kluwe and Scott Fujita, and they're straight guys and they believe in me and they support me. So we think we can do so much in helping young people, curbing suicide rates, letting kids stand a little bit taller that are part of the LGBT community. Gosh darn it, it's hard. and we'll curb suicide rates, and kids ultimately, they'll get better educations, they'll feel better about themselves, and they'll go on to be successful Americans just by the littlest thing, a little bit of support and love.
Yeah, it's about kids. I mean, it lets them say, I am not alone. And like Brendon said, it will save lives. There's no doubt in my mind. Like the young lady who I met down in the GLAAD Awards, it will save lives. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
So you mentioned Jason Collins. I thought it was interesting. In your brief to the U.S. Supreme Court, I have the quote here, no active athlete in any of the major male sports has come out as professional athletes themselves feel the impact of homophobia. And then shortly after that, Jason Collins did in Sports Illustrated. And I was wondering how you guys felt about that.
Yeah, Robbie Rogers as well.
Yes.
I think it's so amazing. And it's also, there's something that really is crazy is that Brittany Griner also came out, right? And as a backstory, she was the first round draft pick in the WNBA. She went to Baylor University and just kind of impromptu said, oh, I'm a lesbian or whatever. And backstory, you don't hear about it. That's where we're trying to get with the male athletes. Mm-hmm. We want it to be a backstory. We don't want it to be first page of Sports Illustrated. Everybody's looking at it. It's the biggest talk, and it's a whole big deal. Obama, Oprah. I mean, that's great. We want the support, but at the same time, we just want people to be who they are and to live their lives and to be happy. So Jason's going to do so much for people, and he's going to continue to work, and it'll be really great to see him actually play in a game next year. I don't know if it happens, and hopefully if he does play in a game, it'll be for the right reasons, because the basketball team needs him, not because the basketball team is trying to have a gay athlete on a team. So I think it's amazing, and it just shows how far we've come in such a short amount of time, and it really makes me feel bad for people like Martina Navratilova or Billie Bean or Ezra Tuolo. These are all athletes that came out in the 80s and 90s, and now today this is being embraced, and they lost endorsements, they couldn't play in tournaments, and they tried to cover up stories and scandals, and people, it used to be a sin, they considered sodomites and all these crazy things, and now today we get to have someone that's touted as a hero, and in large part it's because of the people that came before them.
Yeah, well, it's great to have this conversation. I think it'll be even greater when we get to the point where this conversation doesn't even need to be had. Right. I mean, how great of a day will that be?
Yeah. I mean, and really it comes down to, we're athletes, we're playing a sport. It shouldn't matter what your sexuality is, because we're out there to do our jobs to the best of our abilities. And, Your sexuality plays no part in that, except if you're forced to cover it up and you can't play to the best of your abilities because you're worried about being revealed. So that's what Jason doing is so great, is that he's like, look, I'm not going to have to deal with this anymore. Now I'm just going to focus solely on playing basketball. And that's awesome, because that's what everyone should be able to do.
Did any of you guys have negative repercussions from your teams for being outspoken in favor of equality?
Talk to
I thought Chris might want to answer this one.
Oh, boy. I'm happy to be with Oakland right now. Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things, it's unfortunate in the NFL that coaches and management view any sort of speaking out or attention as distraction. And I don't think that that's the case. I think that you can be a professional athlete, you can play at a very high level, and you can also raise awareness for very important issues that affect a large amount of people in this country. And you know, you hear about all these guys who have either their charities or they have their events, or you know, they're doing fundraising for the NFL or awareness for the NFL. It's like, well, those are exactly the same things. You're having guys do things away from football. What is it about talking about same-sex marriage or LGBT rights? What does that all of a sudden make a difference that you can't play football anymore? So I think that's an idea that we need to move away from, is that athletes as role models have to be only about sports, because athletes are so much more than that. I mean, look at the three of us up here. We're not just football players. We have so many other interests, and you know, it does a disservice to people if you slap a label on them and say that's all you can be, whether it be, you know, you're just a football player or you're just gay. It goes for anything in society.
Yeah, we're people first. Football players a very distant second. And he said it perfectly. You know, I don't want to say that, you know, speaking out now is frowned upon so much like it was even 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, the conversation again is evolving. You got young people coming up, like Chris just mentioned too, who are just more open, more tolerant, more accepting. And you know, the coaches got to accept that, because you know, by and large, we dictate the coaches' jobs too. So they got to get on board.
Yeah.
You know, our successes and failures dictate their livelihood. So
right. Well, and that's the other thing that drives me crazy, is the fact that if you think a player being gay is going to be a distraction, well, yeah, there'll be some media attention for a week or two, but think how much better that player would play if he didn't have to focus on hiding his entire life from everyone around him. You think that's not a distraction? Are you kidding me?
Right.
That's the biggest distraction you could possibly have.
Yeah, we need to get past the point where something like that would be viewed as a negative distraction. I mean, if you can't deal with the distractions in this business, you don't belong in this business. I mean, you got guys, all kinds of crazy issues, and in-room, in-house fighting, and a potential coaching change in the middle of the season. Those are distractions. Yeah, right. Someone being himself is not a negative distraction. Right.
Not at all.
Scott, why don't I start with you on this one? Do you think that the professional sports leagues have gotten better about disciplining players when they do make anti-gay slurs?
Yeah, it's complicated. In the NFL, I don't know if we have disciplined anybody yet for that. And I'm sort of torn on the fence about that. I mean, when a player speaks his mind, you know, do I think they should be fined a whole bunch of money for that? I mean, they are exercising their right to free speech. I don't like it. I have no problem pulling guys aside to talk about it. But if nothing else, the good that comes from that is that it starts another conversation. And the media jumps on guys right now immediately, right after they say something. And I never like to be that guy. I prefer a more diplomatic, behind-the-scenes approach. I pull teammates aside, talked about them. I let them know, you know, why using a word like faggot in the locker room might be offensive to so many people. You never know if the guy in the locker next to you might be gay. And he might equate that as you saying, I hate gay people, which I know you as a teammate, I know you as a person. You are not that way. You do not hate gay people. But again, it's flipping the conversation, and that could happen so fast. And a lot of people, you know, come from a climate or a family atmosphere, or all their boys back home who, that's such a common part of their vernacular, and they never thought about it that way. You know what? That's right. You know, maybe they do think that, you know, I hate gay people when I say that, and I don't. Maybe I should stop saying that. So it's just flipping the conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's also about not so much punishment, it's about awareness. It's about making guys aware of, I've said something that can affect a whole group of people, and I should realize why what I said is wrong. And you know, like when Chris Kluwe made his statements before the Super Bowl, that's something that you don't want to jump down his throat and immediately just discard him. You want to help him realize why what he said makes so many people's lives so much worse. And I think that's really the key, like what Scott said, is educating these guys and just making them aware of other people's lives. And you see that a lot in our Congress, in Republican policy makers, that all of a sudden they have a family member that comes out as gay, and their voting switches dramatically.
He was 25 years old.
Yeah.
He was born that way.
Right, yeah. So I mean, you see stuff like that, and it's like, a lot of times it takes that personal connection, and a lot of that is education. It's realizing the fact that there are other people out in the world and learning about that.
I think it is an education. Like you bring a concept to somebody that people are born gay and they just, oh my God, show me the proof, show me the evidence. No way, the Bible says. I'm like, damn. It's like, I don't see Muslims and Jews trying to ban bacon double cheeseburgers, but you zealots are trying to ban freaking gay marriage, you know? So it is an education, and as much as I'm against religion, I also believe it's your right to have religion. I'm always going to fight for your right to have religion. I'm not, just like, you know, you're trying to ban gay marriage, I'm not going to try to ban religion. That's your right. That's your freedom. That's what this country was built on. So the beautiful thing about it is that when guys make stupid ass comments and they say these homophobic slurs, they become our freaking best allies. The story goes worldwide, just like Emmett Burns, you know, tried to blow me up. My boy Chris Kluwe put his ass on the spot, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm getting letters from Japan, Brazil, all these different places, and I'm sure Chris did too. And it just brought so much attention to the cause, and in large part, that's why we're here, because some freaking jerk that people put into a position of power to help people was trying to, you know, take people's rights away. So they become our biggest allies, even though Emmett Burns, you know, we don't have time to teach old dogs new tricks. Maybe we'll just wait for him to die. But guys like, for example, Kobe Bryant, it was so amazing. A couple years ago, he dropped the F-bomb on national TV. He was talking to a ref, right? And he was fined, and then he did some stuff with the LGBT community. And then a couple months ago, someone on his Twitter feed dropped the F-bomb on his feed, and he tweets the guy, hey man, you can't say that. You know, it's wrong, and this is why it's wrong. And then that tweet goes worldwide. Oh, Kobe's come full circle. I thought it was so beautiful. And even Chris Culliver, he went and worked with the Trevor Project, and it was really crazy because all that stuff happened during the Super Bowl, and I didn't know who he was. I looked him up on Twitter, and he was following me. So I dropped him. Nobody knows this. I dropped him a message, and he never heard back from me. But I know he got the message, and I said, I always. It's kind of sick that I love when the guy makes the mistake, because the first thing I do is I go reach out to them. I'm an athlete ally, you know, and I'm also a football player, and I love my athletes. And I mean, we're all so different, and athletes are different. There's so many special and amazing guys. Even Adrian Peterson's a special and amazing guy. And how do we make him an ally? So the first thing I do is I go and I'll send him a message, send Color a message. I'm like, my man, you have a chance to make this right, and I have your back. So then he went and he did the Trevor Project, and I didn't know what the Trevor Project was. So I'm like, damn, he's going and doing the Trevor Project. I gotta go do the damn Trevor Project. Can't let a guy that was a past homophobe freaking, I'm an ally, I got work to do. So I called Abby Land from the Trevor Project, and now she's my boy. You know, we be texting it up. She's also the mayor of West Hollywood, and so we chop it up, we're cool, and that's all because of Chris Culliver, and we're all here because of Mr. Burns. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your bigotry.
Yeah, exactly.
You're changing the world more than we are. It's freaking amazing.
So I wanted to ask you guys about a few other topics, and then I'd open up to questions from the audience. Scott, I know you're working on a bunch of other causes, so I was hoping you could talk to us about some of those and maybe let people here know how Google might be able to help with
Okay,
those
yeah, I'm kind of a busybody. You know, I just retired, like Stacey said earlier, a few months ago, and my plan was to sort of just decompress and catch my breath and, you know, enjoy the kids. But I don't sit still very well at all. You know, I'm an up late at night kind of guy. Always ideas circling in my head. A million things I like to do, but yeah, I have a lot of causes that I'm very passionate about. You know, one of which you mentioned, breast cancer awareness. My mother's a 2-time breast cancer survivor, so that's always been close to home for me. Adoption is another one. Gulf Coast restoration, given that I got to New Orleans, you know, not long after Katrina. Was actually the first free agent to go to New Orleans after Katrina. People thought I was nuts. Oakland was the other option, though, so that would have been more nuts at the time. No, but one of the groups I work with right now is a group called Team Gleason. My former teammate in New Orleans, Steve Gleason, who these guys know well, is just kind of really an iconic figure in New Orleans right now. Big-time special teams player down for the Saints for about 7 or 8 years. Blocked what I call the punt heard around the world, and the Superdome's reopening. Monday Night Football, the first game back in New Orleans after Katrina against the Falcons. Steve was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, in January of 2011. And Steve and I are I'm one of his closest friends, and he reached out to me not long after he got the diagnosis right here in San Francisco, and it was just devastating. He had been having some symptoms for a while. We knew that was a possibility, but here he is, 33 years old. You never imagine in your wildest dreams someone his age, be afflicted with a horrific disease like that. And I lost my uncle to ALS about 17 years ago, so I knew firsthand how difficult this would be for he and his wife. So Steve started a group called Team Gleason. In our foundation, I'm on the board of directors. We do these crazy, wacky adventures all the time because that's the kind of guy Steve is. Kind of the premise and the mission of the foundation is to push the envelope on technologies. And that's why I'm so happy to be here on Google's campus today, because people like Steve, they need help. The way he communicates now is with his eyes, through a software where on his wheelchair he has a tablet device in front of him with a bar over the top that has these infrared cameras which scan his eyes. His eyes lock onto a keyboard on his screen, and if they lock onto a letter for 0.2 of a second, that registers a letter, and he could click speak at the end of typing a word with his eyes, and then it comes through a program called Cereproc. It's a synthetic voice that he generated while he could still speak. So it's kind of a new age version of my good friend Steve Gleason's voice. Still sounds like him, but the problem is that he can only type about 10 or 15 words a minute, and people don't have the patience for that. And that's where patients like Steve are struggling because they're so marginalized. No one can hear what they have to say. No one has the patience to sit around and wait for him to complete a sentence. So you come to a place like Google, and I think, here are some of the brightest tech minds in the world. There's got to be a way we can improve technology like that. And I recognize that, again, it's a marginalized group. There's only 30,000 people really afflicted by this, but there's got to be ways to make something like that appeal to the mass market. This is a guy who only has use of his eyes. He can control everything with his eyes if the technology is there. And there's got to be a way to make that appeal to the mass market and get it on the radar of a place like Google. Why not? So if there's anybody in here who's listening or works with Google Glass or anything like that, I know there's got to be a way. I'd love to talk afterwards with you guys because there's got to be a way to help people like my friend Steve, who's just amazing.
And just to interject, we have a gentleman by the name of O.J. Brigance, also in the Ravens organization, that's suffering from ALS as well. And Stephen Hawking is suffering from ALS. And you see how Stephen operates, and you see him on TV and stuff, so you can get a visual of what our brothers are going through. And the rates of ALS are higher in football players and soccer players. And so, they're kind of making a correlation between repeated blows to the head and, the soccer players are hitting the soccer balls and whatnot. But it's something that actually I worry about. Like, man, for some reason, I just think like, man, this could happen to me. So it'd definitely be amazing if some of you geniuses in here could figure out something. I mean, I'm kind of bummed out that I have a wire on my lav right now. Like, I was thinking it'd be like a wire-free lav. Anybody? No?
A holographic prompt.
Same old lav from high school here. But it's a serious cause, and it'd be so amazing if you guys could help in this arena, in this space.
Great. I think we have a video. Do you think we have time for it, Jimmy?
I can cue it up while you're getting ready. So Steve, he came up to Cleveland this past season when I was in season, and he had what's called a diaphragm pacemaker implanted that helps his diaphragm function. That's one of the things is upper respiratory failure with this disease. He's in recovery after the procedure. He can't talk anymore. He could just kind of mumble a little bit. And he's in recovery, and he pulls me aside. He nods me over, and he whispers in my ear. He sort of mumbles, and he says, "Hey, what are you doing this April?" And I said, "I got nothing planned." He said, "I want to go to Machu Picchu." And I said, "As in Peru?" And he says, "Yeah, I want you to take me to Machu Picchu." So I said, "I have no idea how in the hell we're going to pull that off." But that's just the kind of guy he is. We do these crazy expeditions, and we always bring another ALS patient with us. So we did it. We carried 2 grown men with ALS up to Machu Picchu. So GoPro sponsored us, and I had a GoPro camera strapped to my chest the whole time. And this is kind of a teaser reel that Team Gleason put together, and a full-length feature will air on ESPN this fall. So it's about creating awareness, getting this on people's radar, and again, trying to push the envelope on the technologies to make these people's lives easier.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. No, it was an epic trip, and the way Steve communicated with me on most of that trip was with his eyelids. I leaned him back, you okay, buddy? You need some water, and it was with his eyelids, yes, no, and that's about it. So we got to fix that.
Chris, question for you. Can you tell us about your book that's coming out? Is this month?
Yeah, this month, June 25th, and it kind of builds off this idea that the struggle for gay rights is also a smaller part of the struggle for human rights, and that's something that societies as a whole have not found a way to fix throughout our entire history. I mean, if you look at every single civilization throughout the span of human history, they have all failed. It's all been due to a lack of empathy. It's been due to a lack of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and realizing that if this course of action harms someone else, then it's going to be detrimental in the long run. Whether you create conflicts from within, from oppressing your own people, or if you create conflicts from without by trying to take something from someone else. And so that's one of the main ideas in this book, is that as a civilization, if we want to stand the test of time, if we want to last in geological terms, we have to figure out how to preach and teach empathy to all the members of our society. And even if we can't get everyone, we can treat it like a vaccine. If we get 90% of the people in our society to have empathy, it acts as herd immunity. And then the people who don't have empathy, you can limit the damage that they do. And so it's this broader look of what does it mean to be a successful civilization, and are we going to be able to do that? And then there's also a lot of random stuff, like funny writings, short stories, my letter to Emmett Burns, various other things. And it's really, I like to describe it as a look inside my mind, so buyer beware. But one of the underlying foundations is this idea we have to treat people the right way, and it's not a hard concept. It's a very easy philosophical concept. It's treat others the way you would like to be treated. I mean, we all learn it in kindergarten. It's really simple. So, yeah.
Questions from the audience? Susie?
First off,
So are there efforts to teach the coaches so when they're coaching young kids, they can start learning about equality young?
It's funny you mention that, because I've actually been contacted by a guy he's called Coach Randy, and he's in the process of writing a book on how to be a better coach. I guess he's spoken in New York, and he's one of the assistant athletic people for the softball team at Rutgers. So he's well familiar with the whole bullying thing, and his goal is to write a book that people can use as a resource for coaches, and that there is a right way to coach, and you don't have to denigrate the kids under your power in order to coach well, because that ultimately doesn't teach anyone anything useful in life. It teaches you to scream at people, and that's about it. So he's working on that. He's been asking my advice on, okay, how do I go about approaching this, what to do? And hopefully he'll be able to kind of parlay that into something that people pay attention to and listen to, because coaches are a very important role model, especially for young kids. A lot of your behavior you pick up from your coach. And I think he's doing a great thing, and I fully plan on supporting him in, getting that message out, that bullying is not acceptable, whether it's player to player or coach to player.
For me, I like to talk to the parents and educate the parents. Before you have your child on a team, you should talk to that coach. You should feel out that coach, and let him know that you're not going to put up with any type of discrimination on any sports teams that your children play on, and that also opens up the conversation to their children, and having this conversation with their children about LGBT rights and LGBT inclusion. So when you have those tough conversations, and maybe I'm preaching to the wrong crowd. This is usually I'm talking to straight people, or sometimes even LGBT people, but you really it doesn't have to address them in this issue on how to talk about inclusion, because they already do. So you have to bring up tough issues like molestation or bullying or LGBT awareness. And letting your kids be sensitive. That's exactly why my kids are here today. I want them to be around the LGBT community. I brought them to a black tie event last night, and they were freaking atrocious and yelling and screaming. But I try to tell them I want my kids to be around the smartest, the brightest, the best people in the world, and we all know that comes from the LGBT community, that comes from society. So it opens the door. I talk to the parents. I tell them, exactly, what you should expect from your coaches, and what you will not put up and tolerate with, and then have the conversation with your children as well about some of these other tough issues.
Well said, guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's about teaching empathy, like Chris says. There's so many coaches at the youth level, high school level, all over the country. You can't get your hands on all of them. you do your best by speaking out publicly. You know, when Chris writes a letter like he did, everybody sees that. You know, these coaches see that, and it puts it on their radar. So again, you can't get your hands on everybody as hard as we try, but it's all about flipping the conversation. I know I keep saying that, but it's about empathy. Teach empathy. And you can still teach toughness in the game of football. This is a tough game, but you can also teach empathy. There's nothing wrong with that.
For me, it's the fact that it is a generational issue, and the fact is, you know, older people right now have not grown up in an environment where they've been around gay people, openly gay people. So to them, that's going to be their natural reaction. Is that, you know, even if they're supportive, they're gonna be like, look, do what you want to do, but just leave me out of it. I don't want to know about it. The thing is as our kids grow up, as the younger generations grow up, they have gay friends, they have gay siblings, they have gay teammates, and they know about it now. You have that education to where that's how society will shift. And unfortunately, like I said, it is a long-term change. It's not something you can just flip a switch and all of a sudden everyone's like, I understand now. You know, I'm being a dick to someone. I probably shouldn't do that. It's it's going to take a while. And the key is that if you think someone is receptive enough, you can tell them, look, you know, you may not want to know about it, but this is part of someone's life. This is part of my life, and you know, I would like you to know about it, so then you can understand where I'm coming from.
I always say that the LGBT community is obviously a disenfranchised group. So how else are they going to let people know that, you know, we need rights, we need to be treated equal? You know, you're going to see, that's why it's a big deal that Jason Collins comes out. It shouldn't be, but, you know, it's something that's never happened before. And how else are they going to change things unless they get allies, unless they get the majority of the population to believe in their cause, which is kind of crazy to me. That we even vote for this, it's even up to popular opinion. So I just try to explain to them, like, what would you do? I mean, what did Martin Luther King do? What did Rosa Parks do? They screamed for attention, and eventually things changed, and the LGBT community is no different.
Yeah, change can be slow. I mean, at the time of Loving versus Virginia, I think only 13% of the country was on board with marriage, with interracial marriage. It wasn't until I think 1990 that at least a simple majority of this country was on board with interracial marriage. That's 1990. So change is slow, and it can't be at the whims of the voter. Or, you know, it's just the fact that we're voting on something like marriage equality makes no sense to me. I mean, you can't follow the whims of the voter or the mob mentality. It's just, you know, it's got to be the government. Brendon said that earlier.
Yeah, and I tell guys, I'm like, there's countries where they practice genital mutilation. There was societies where they ate people, you know, and sacrificed them to the gods, and that's because that was the popular thing to do. That's what they thought was the right thing to do. So it's no different today. I mean, we think we're civilized, and we claim to be the greatest country in civilization ever. But yet, you know, our neighbors in Mexico and our neighbors in Canada, they have marriage equality. So. I just try to educate guys and let them know this is why it's like this. We have to make a change. There's people that are yearning, begging to be treated equally, and we're not doing that. And that's what America was founded on. And quite frankly, the Constitution's not living up to its end of the bargain. So I let them know.
So the question is essentially, does there need to be education for gay people about whether athletes who use terms that are viewed as hostile are really hostile toward the gay community?
I think we saw it just last week, right, with Roy Hibbert. You guys familiar with the young man from the Pacers? He was talking, and he's like, yes, you know, my coach at Georgetown, I love him. He's a great coach. My teammates, yada, 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 I love them. So I was like, wow, I'm really impressed with this young man. He's not worried about, you know, saying he loves other men, which other guys have a problem about. But then as soon as I felt that, he made a compliment or something to one of the other players, then he said no homo. And I was like, oh, he doesn't get it, you know? So, but do I believe that he's homophobic, that he means any ill will towards the LGBT community? No, I don't. But that's where we talk about there's an education that needs to take place, a conversation needs to take place, and that's what we're here to do, and that's what we're doing. But we have a long ways to go, so we just continue to educate. And there are a lot of athletes that don't have ill will towards the LGBT community, and then there are some that clearly do. And I think at the end of the day, I want to get to the point where we look on homophobia like we look on racism, like that person obviously has a problem, and how do we address that problem?
It's funny, you keep mentioning no homo. I think about a year ago, I sent out a tweet, and it said, whoever the 5th grader was that coined the phrase "no homo," how did he gain all that traction? And people respond and they say, "Really, a 5th grader coined that?" And I said, "No, I was making a joke about him."
Sarcasm.
The brightest minds in the world live on Twitter.
Yeah, it's you know, I've seen that actually, because growing up I was the nerdy bookish kid. Like my glasses were like that big and probably about that thick, and I was always walking around reading a book. So you know, I was more the nerd who played athletics than the the athlete who read books. And so for me personally, there's a little bit of a label that is justly earned by athletes, and that a lot of guys, their entire identity is wrapped up in, I am a football player, or I'm a soccer player, or I'm a baseball player, and anyone else who's not that, I look down on, because that's just kind of the way that I was raised, and so that's something that as athletes we need to show that we are beyond that, because that's the way we become closer to these other communities, like the LGBT community, is that we show it's no longer you're finding the gay kid and beating him up during recess, because that's happened. That's been the underlying story of our society. There's a reason there's that jock stereotype. So we need to work on changing that and showing that just as gay people aren't defined by that label, being gay isn't all that you are, being an athlete isn't all that you are. You are much more than that. You are a complex human being. You are everything that goes into you. And so, that's what we're trying to show, is that we aren't just football players. We are more than that.
We have to get our football players to believe that as well.
Yeah,
That's why you see, a lot of the guys that end up, probably going bankrupt and losing their money. It's because after football's over, who are they? Who am I? Where do I go?
Yeah.
And that's probably a lot of the same guys that are saying no homo.
Yeah,
and a lot of these things.
They don't know how to identify themselves once that athlete label is gone. That's all they are, and they have to move past that.
Well, I wish we could stay here and talk all day, but I'm being told we need to wrap up. So I wanted to be sure to thank you guys on behalf of everyone at Google for coming here and for your eloquent advocacy on behalf of marriage equality. So thanks a lot. This has been great.
Thank you.